Hi, hello, welcome to literally the last few hours that are left of the year 2023, and I am sitting here at 6 in the afternoon before the new year strikes to film my yearly eyeshadow palette ranking video. I just wanted to throw it in. I know sometimes people can't hear anything, but in case it sounds like World War III is starting outside, do not worry, it's just people who are blowing up money in the air. That's it. I will never understand fireworks, to each their own, but you know, that's the reason why you're hearing the bombardment outside. I wanted to film this video today, but the day didn't really go quite as planned, so that's why I'm sitting here so late, and you know, that's why people have already started to massively shoot up their fireworks. But before we get into the actual ranking, I just wanted to take a few minutes, a few moments, if you will, to reflect like generally speaking on my eyeshadow purchases for this past year and a couple of like interesting things that I have noticed. First and foremost, I'm going to rank 18 eyeshadow palettes, and 18 is a number that I'm not super proud of, I'll be honest with you. I was really proud of myself the past few years when the amount of eyeshadow palettes was quite overseeable and it was always in the ballpark of 10 to maximum 15. The last time that I ranked so many eyeshadow palettes was 2018, which was the first year that I did this ranking video, when I ranked either 20 or a little over 20 eyeshadow palettes. And in 2018 I had gone on a journey to like try a bunch of pressed indie eyeshadow formulas, and I think something similar is happening this year, only we are on the complete other side of the spectrum in terms of like the pricing of the eyeshadows, because we've gone from indie to ultimate luxury. So this year I went on a journey to discover luxury eyeshadow formulas, which is why I think one of the reasons why I have so many of these palettes. And with that said, Pat McGrath released a bunch of her new queens and I purchased all of them, and the majority of the palettes that you're going to see ranked in this video are actually in the sizes of like queens and quads. There are only two palettes that I would really qualify as true like eyeshadow palettes. Everything else is in a smaller format. But like I said, 18 isn't exactly a number that I am proud of, and I'm really hoping that now that I have dipped my toes in a number of these formulas and I've gotten a little bit of a taste of what each of these textures is like and formulas is like, and I don't feel like there is much more to be added right now to the story. Yeah, you can hear the bombardment, I'm sorry. I hope that next year I'm going to slow down and go back to being a little bit more selective and critical with my eyeshadow purchases, and hopefully I will only focus on like colors or color stories that truly speak to me and would add something to my current makeup taste. The other important thing that I wanted to mention is that this is the first year since 2018 that there isn't going to be a Mothership palette from Pat McGrath Labs in the ranking at all, because ultimately I decided to not purchase Sunlit Seduction Mothership 11. And I wanted you to know I'm okay with that. I have made my peace with that. I'm perfectly okay with breaking the cycle of owning all the motherships, because for one, I've never been a completionist. I don't consider myself someone who needs to absolutely own everything from a certain line or a certain brand, because I don't subscribe to that kind of mentality at all. I don't understand it. I think ultimately you're not going to enjoy every single product or every single product within a certain line that a brand has to offer, so there's no need to put yourself under the mental pressure that you need to have them all. They're not Pokemons, you don't have to catch them all. So with that, I'm perfectly fine not owning Sunlit Seduction. I'm very happy for everyone who has purchased it and thinks it's a beautiful palette. It's not at all for me, and from what I have seen from other people's rankings, it didn't really make it very high into anyone's ranking, which is, you know, a little bit indicative of where this eyeshadow palette really stands within people's minds, because normally in the past couple of years it really has been motherships that sort of like unequivocally rule the top 3 spots in everyone's eyeshadow palette ranking, or at least the eyeshadow palette rankings of people that I enjoy watching. And this is the first year where I think Sunlit didn't make it into the top 3 of anyone that I have watched, which granted isn't all that many people. Anyway, and now we can move on to the actual ranking. So ranking at the very bottom, we are starting with a brand that I only tried out this year, and that is going to be Bobbi Brown. And the name of this palette in particular is the Moonstone Glow Looks and Eye Cheek palette, which looks like this. In terms of formula, love it. Best of the best. These are essentially the Blitz Astral VR type shades, like the baked goodness from Pat McGrath Labs, but then make it Bobbi Brown. With that said, while I love the formula, I cannot rank this higher because this palette as a whole has so many drawbacks to it. There was so much potential to do something really great here and so much missed opportunity, because a number of these eyeshadows basically look the same. Like these two mattes, they are in the baked formula, they're very flattering on the eye, they're beautiful, but they're very gently pigmented and they are essentially the same shade. I think ultimately you could possibly use them as your like bronzer contour kind of shades if you were to go in with a somewhat smaller brush, which would increase the versatility of this palette. But really the problem with this palette is the versatility, because you get three shades which are exactly the same thing. So you have this massive highlighter here. Who needs a highlighter in this massive size is something I will never understand. This could easily have been a split pan where you have either a blush or a highlighter, or a bronzer and a highlighter. Perfect. Then you have these two shades here, which are also essentially the same thing. Like there is a minor difference in their undertone, but once they're on the eye, they're essentially both Astral Solstice from Pat McGrath. And while Astral Solstice is a glorious eyeshadow, I don't need to have two of them in the same palette. And then you're left with just these two shades, which are somewhat more interesting. They're really beautiful. This one is like a gunmetal gray with this beautiful blue sparkle to it. And this one is a very interesting sort of like lilac-y pink reflect on a smokier type base. This is actually the only eyeshadow I've ever come across that sort of reminds me of Lavendering from the Risque Rose Quad from Pat McGrath. So ultimately, unfortunately, this palette lacks versatility, it lacks imagination, there's so much repetition, and there's just, I'm ranking it last because I'm mad at all the wasted potential that this could have had. At position number 17, this is going to be really controversial, and I know a lot of people are again going to be really shocked and surprised that I'm ranking this so low, but I'm going to rank here my YSL Clutch Quad in the shade Casaba Spices, which is this sort of like warm-toned camel brown champagne color story. Again, this has more to do with my personal preference and what I consider, you know, lacking a little bit in this color story than anything else. I think the formula of these is really solid. They're good eyeshadows. They're something new on the market because they are this like cream to powder, more powder than really a cream, but there is a creaminess to the texture of them. So they are a unique formulation and a very elegant formulation. And then you have this beautiful, like more toppery, sparkly, glittery kind of shade to add a little bit of glimmer to your eye look if that's your choice. So you can go many different routes. You can go very natural if you just have this shade and one of these on your lids. You can do like a little smoky eye with a little like shimmering eyeshadow here moment. And the tones of these eyeshadows are beautiful and very flattering. But in the end of the day, I have to rank eyeshadows based on my personal taste, and having tried other luxury eyeshadow formulas that I prefer, I can honestly tell you these more powdery textures are not my preference. My heart lies with more like the baked gelée type formulas. So this is just something that I've discovered through trying these types of different textures, that these more powdery formulas are just not my preference. They're fine, I can work with them, they're really good quality, but it's just not what the heart wants, you guys. The heart wants what the heart wants. And then to me, unfortunately, this type of shade, this type of like creamy shade, is completely wasted. I have no use for it except for using it as a brow bone highlight, and honestly, when you're paying so much for an eyeshadow palette, you don't really want to have an eyeshadow here that is a brow bone highlight. You just want like a solid metallic shade. I think if this was a metallic eyeshadow, like even like a basic golden champagne, which was like a satin, I would have liked this a little bit better. It's just my personal opinion that the two don't mix very well and they need someone to mediate in between. I think that there is like a satin or a metallic shade that's missing in between. So it is a little bit an error on my side that I picked this specific palette. Maybe if I had picked up Storados, I would have liked this formula and these quads a lot better. But because Storados looks so much like Soft Cashmere from Dior, and I don't know that it can get any better than Soft Cashmere from Dior, I decided to forgo Storados and go. At 16, we have one of the new Pat McGrath Labs quints that she released for holidays 2023. This is the shade Bordeaux Bliss. So that is the color story, which comes with like the mauvey, purpley type shades and this beautiful black that is loaded with red glitter. And that is really the only eyeshadow in here that I would consider somewhat more unique and somewhat of a reason for me to even keep this whole color story. Because while I like the formula in here, it is the good old Queen formula that we all love and enjoy. There's really nothing in here that is very unique or very exciting within Pat's range. And then I have to mention this nonsense right here. This is a matte eyeshadow with glitter. What is this? It's not 2016. We don't do matte eyeshadows with glitter anymore because they're pointless. I can understand this being more of like the satin type formula that is present in some of the other Queens that we can talk about later, but this is not a satin. This is a matte which has glitter in it, which is a moot point. The glitter won't stick, so you're just basically going to be left with a matte finish on your eyelids, and if you want the glitter to stick, you'll have to apply a glitter glue, but matte eyeshadows don't do very well with glitter glue. They get really dark and the texture is really ruined by the glitter glue. So either way, you're at an impasse with this formula, so I don't understand it. This eyeshadow here in the middle is a truly beautiful Eleganza type shade. But with that said, it is so similar to Eleganza and the purple mauve that is in the Bridgerton 1 palette that between the three, I'm pretty set with that kind of eyeshadow. And the reason I'm going to keep this Queen is going to be this like blackened with Bordeaux sparkle kind of eyeshadow, because it is truly unique and I love the texture. It has a creaminess to it and I love the glitter because it adds such an interesting element to your look. So next up, at position number 15, we have another Pat McGrath palette. I have to say 70% of these are Pat McGrath palettes because I still remained very loyal to the brand throughout this year, and I bought a lot of these at release day without really knowing what I'm getting myself into. And this next palette is an excellent example of I should have probably waited to know what I'm getting myself into before I buy it. And the palette that we're talking about is this one. This is the summer quad release that came out together with the cream blushes. This is Passion Fleur. There are things that I like about this quad, but I think there are more things that I don't like about this quad, and that's why it's ranking so low. This color story, it's a pretty color story. And if you're someone who really loves all of these colors and is going to make a lot of looks out of this palette, great, because it's actually a versatile color story. Like, you can do quite a lot. I only opened this quad and I remember to use it for only this shadow and this shadow. They are truly standouts here. This neutral shade is really, really pretty. It's like a light neutral taupe. And this one, like I said, the pinky lavender one is truly special. Like, nothing in Pat McGrath's collection is quite like it. And I think it's a very ethereal and very beautiful shade. But the other thing that irritated me about this quad is that when the promo pictures of this were released, it created the impression that some of these are going to be in more, you know, interesting textures, like more toppery, sparkly, wet looking textures, like we got with Venusian Sunrise and like we got with Voristic Vixen. Unfortunately, in real life, they are anything but interesting in terms of their texture. They're just a matte and three satin metallic type shadows. I mean, they're not satin, they're more on the metallic side, but there is nothing outstanding about them. They're like a very thick, dense formula, which I also don't really like. They're a different formula to her metallics, say Decadence palette metallics. So for me, this is just too ordinary to be priced like a luxury eyeshadow quad, and there's just nothing that stands out about it besides these two eyeshadows, which are a little bit more unique. At position 14, we have another quint from the holiday collection from Pat McGrath Labs, and I think you're going to be surprised that this specific quint is ranking so low. So the quint in question is the shade Lunar Nightshade, which initially was the quint, I think, that caught everyone's attention. Out of the whole collection, this one seemed like the most unique and interesting color story out of them all. And this palette certainly has its merits, which is why it's not ranking like where Bordeaux Bliss was ranking. There are still some, you know, things in here that I enjoy. But unfortunately, I don't like these shades together as a color story. I understand that this makes the color story a bit more versatile so that you can create more looks with it, but when I have such a small eyeshadow palette format, I don't necessarily need it to be super versatile. I think I need more versatility in my bigger palettes, but when I go into my smaller palette, I don't necessarily need to have the rainbow. I'm fine with sticking to a somewhat like more monochromatic story or a certain theme, if you will. The eyeshadows that stand out in here are again this shade here, which is very similar to the one in Bordeaux Bliss, because instead of the Bordeaux pinky reddish sparkles, you have teal dark blue glitter sparkles. So again, I really like this shade, very unique, very interesting, definitely keeping it for that. And then I really like this shade here, which is like this gorgeous reflective taupe pink champagne. I dislike this shade. I don't think that I've even used it because it's just like with the purple from Passion Fleur. I don't like these kind of purples. They don't look very flattering on me, and even if they did, I just don't like them. What can I say? You know, the heart wants what the heart wants, and the heart doesn't want like these maroony, Bordeaux, purpley type eyeshadows. And then this shadow over here, the light blue, slate blue with the gold sparkles. Now, when the promo images of this palette were released, again, they misleadingly alluded to something of like an aqua mint blue with like a gold pink duochrome to it, and this is not at all what this shade looks like in real life. I think it works really well when you incorporate it into a look or you layer it over other eyeshadows, but I did wear this shade once on the lid on its own and I didn't like it. I think it's a matter of personal preference. It's just too dull for me. The slate blue tone of this eyeshadow is so slate blue that it translates more like a gray than it really does a blue, and I realized that that is absolutely a matter of personal preference. At position number 13 we have another palette that left me a little bit more lukewarm than anything else, and I think it's going to surprise you. It's also going to be the first somewhat like bigger palette in this ranking, and that is the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude. I don't know that there's any point in me opening the palette to show you because my I Need a Nude palette no longer looks like I Need a Nude. I mashed my Glam and I Need a Nude palette, so now in here what you see is mostly the mattes from the two palettes. I appreciate what this palette is trying to be, and I think if you had the right skin tone and the right needs for this palette in terms of like being a nude, easy to wear on the daily neutral eyeshadow palette, this may be one of your absolute favorites this year, because what this palette does offer very beautifully is a range of new formulas and new finishes in the Natasha Denona range. Why am I ranking it so low and why am I so lukewarm about it? Now, first and foremost, when it comes to brown and neutral eyeshadows, everyone will eventually subconsciously be drawn to certain types of undertones. The undertones in this palette are very pink. They're not neutral, they're not warm, they're not even mauve. I think they're more pink than anything else. And unfortunately, pink toned neutrals are not exactly my most flattering type of neutral eyeshadow. And the second thing, and the second critique that I've had for Natasha Denona's monochromatic palettes for the past few releases is actually that she abandoned her original concept with the gold palette, where she had the gold eyeshadows, but she had some like pops of color and some interesting duochromes, and she decided to just stick to the color story, the monochromatic, you know, story that she's trying to tell us, which on the one hand is really nice. If you want a no-brainer palette where you don't have to think about how to combine things, that's great. But I feel like, again, there's a missed opportunity for having so much potential to add a little bit of like something more unique, a little bit more versatility. I think I Need a Nude could have been a much better palette, even if it still remained in like the pink undertone range, if there were some interesting pops of color. I think this specific undertone of nude would have worked so beautifully if she had added some like actual like forest green or like cooler toned greens. And actually, as a lot of you will know, to increase the functionality of both my Glam and I Need a Nude palettes, I decided to mash up the two color stories. I transferred all the metallic eyeshadows in one of the casings and I left the mattes in here, or like most of the mattes, so that I have a bit more of a range of undertones even within the neutrals to work with when I'm doing these sort of looks. So so far I have enjoyed using these palettes in this manner. I think that I could use them a lot more and to really like get to know the combined color story. I've actually done 2 videos already with this mashup that you can find very easily on my channel, but this is definitely like the mashup of the 2 palettes, and how I feel about them is work in progress, TBD. At position number 12 we have the luxury eyeshadow formula that ranks personally for me the absolute highest as of right now, and that is the Guerlain Ombre G quads. The Guerlain Ombre G quads that are part of their core line, all the way up to the denim quad that was released in the spring-summer of 2023. Everything past that point is not in the formula that I talk about and I gush about all the time. So the eyeshadow palette in question that I'm ranking at position 12 is Exotic Orchid. Exotic Orchid is a somewhat like warmer reddish gold, yeah, like your standard like warm summer type of color story. I adore the formula, I use this palette a lot. The only reason it is ranking a little bit lower is because out of all of my other Ombre G quads that I'm ranking this year, this one has the least versatility in terms of the finishes that you're getting in here, because the finishes that you're getting in here are this more sparkly toppery type finish, and all of these three are satin mattes, and some of the other quads have a little bit more to offer in terms of finishes, and that is the only reason this is ranking a little bit lower. I love the two browns in here, especially this like more neutrally brown, because it's a very interesting, very like muted tone of brown that I can use as a one and done eyeshadow and then throw a little bit of glimmer on it. They're beautiful textures. They're so flattering, they're so easy to work with. They're basically, you can throw them on with your eyes closed in the dark and just lightly smudge them around, and I can guarantee you, you're going to walk out and you're going to look flawless. That's how beautifully easy to work with these formulas are. Anyway, at position number 11 we've got the Golden One, which is one of the queens that was released with the Star Wars collection last year. And yes, that is the reason why you're going to see all the three queens that were released last year in this year's ranking, because I realized as I was writing down all the palettes that in fact I didn't include the other two queens in my ranking last year because I only received them in the beginning of January, so technically they belong to the ranking of this year, even though in my mind they feel like last year palettes. The Golden One is not a very unique color story, and that is also the reason why I'm ranking it relatively low. I mean, at this point, from this point onwards, the top 10 are all palettes that I really like, and if it weren't for the fact that there are just more unique color stories in the top 10, I would have definitely included the Golden One in there too, because the eyeshadow palette is actually really stunning. This like coppery bronzy brown in particular here, it happens to be like one of my favorite tones of like neutral browns to wear on my lids. However, something that maybe is worth mentioning, with the introduction of these like Star Wars queens, I think she introduced also a new formula within these queens, and this formula is represented by this eyeshadow in this specific queen, and I don't love this formula. It's the type of formula that swatches beautifully. Like if I were to show you a swatch or just the back of my finger now, you would think this eyeshadow is buttery smooth, but unfortunately it is just too emollient. It translates that way on the lid as well, and it doesn't apply very evenly. It tends to crack throughout the day, even if you put glitter glue, or it doesn't crack, it looks cracked because of how emollient it is. I don't like this formula. I would rather have had this in like the more fluffy, drier type formula that's present in, especially in her original two queens, the Bronze Bliss and Nude Allure. Alright, so let's get into the top 10 now, where at the 10th position we've got another one of the Star Wars queens, and the palette in particular is Sith Seduction. So this palette was one of the color stories that I was immediately drawn to, because it literally contains all of my favorite kind of tones. There is an coppery orange, there is an olive green, there is like a sparkly brown, blue purple kind of shade, and there are two interesting taupe neutrals. The three colorful eyeshadows are very pretty, but to me the two standouts really are the two neutral eyeshadows. So this one over here, which is more of your classic light taupe with beautiful like bluish type sparkle to it, and this more slightly green tinged taupe shade. They're really beautiful on the lids. I really love them. I love me an interesting neutral eyeshadow with sparkle, and both of these just like tick all the boxes for me. Ranking at number 8 we have the final queen from the Star Wars collection. This is Divine Droid. This is my favorite one out of the three. I've always been very clear about this one being my favorite out of the three. The reason it's coming a little bit lower in the ranking is because there are truly three eyeshadows in here that I enjoy and I use on the regular, and these two get a little bit more lost in the mix because they're just not my personal preference when it comes to colors. This sort of like greenish tinge bronze shade is absolutely beautiful. This Astro Lime shade, you have seen it on my eyelids and in my inner corners so many times this year that I don't know that there's any need for me to convince you how much I love this eyeshadow. In fact, I'm a little bit worried about panning Astro Lime eventually, and this squint is gone. I don't even think it's very easy to find it secondhand, so I will have to make peace with, you know, I will eventually run out of this eyeshadow, but I really love this squint. Coming out of nowhere, all the way in the top 10 and ranking even above the Star Wars squints, is actually one of the original squints that Pat McGrath released that I only bought this year. So this is the shade Noodle Lure. As you guys know, I bought Bronze Breeze last year. I was obsessed with it, like literally obsessed with it. I know that YouTubers really love to overuse this word. When I tell you that I was obsessed, I truly mean it. So much so that I bought the backup of that squint, and I still use it and love it to death. But this eyeshadow color story, again, didn't seem very unique to me, didn't seem very special. It seemed actually even quite pink in the photos, which is the reason why I originally didn't pick it up. But then towards the summer months, or right before the summer months, Pat had a sale where she brought back the quints and I was able to purchase this half off. And then I thought, you know what, by now, knowing how much I enjoy this formula, I could at the very least give it a try. And I love the idea of having a brown in these quints because I love to travel with them. So I bought this quint and it just took me by surprise how much I enjoyed it in real life, because in real life this translates so much more like a corally peach neutral color story than anything else, with this beautiful plummy purple here as like your little pop of color. I have truly enjoyed using this eyeshadow palette so much throughout the spring and the summer months ever since I got it. This brown eyeshadow here in particular happens to be one of my absolute favorite neutrals that I have from Pat, because it is just the right undertone for me. It's not too dark, it's not too light, it's the correct undertone, and I love the finish, I love everything about this eyeshadow. At position number 7, we've got a little bit of a surprise. If you had asked me about this quad, about this palette, a couple of months ago, I would have told you that this is going to rank somewhere at the bottom, because when I first got it, I was very lukewarm about it. So the quad in question is Venusian Sunrise. So this was her offering that came out together with the bronzers. Similarly to the blush release a couple of years ago when we got the blushes and the Voyeuristic Vixen quad, this year we got Venusian Sunrise. And it turned out that all this palette needed was for me to buy the correct color of sweater. So I bought this like yellow, like very light cooler toned yellow sweater from Primark a couple of months ago, and then I did a look with this palette and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and it was also probably one of the first times that I truly enjoyed this eyeshadow. So this more like toppery type eyeshadow in here. So let's first get it out of the way. Compared to Voyeuristic Vixen, this is still inferior quad because it's less versatile, and thank goodness at the very least with Venusian Sunrise we got that type of formula. I was actually hoping initially when Passion Fleur was announced, so this one from the summer, that 2 of the eyeshadows would be in this texture, which is I think also one of the reasons I was so deeply disappointed in that quad, because it turned out that none of them are in this texture. But at the very least with Venusian Sunrise we got this eyeshadow here, and let's be honest, this is very much a one-trick pony. You can't really do many different types of looks with it. However, as it turns out, these browns are the right type of undertones for me. Like, I really enjoy the specific undertones that these 2 browns have. They are, they're not yellow toned, they're not neutral or cool toned. They have a little bit of like a red thread through them, but at the same time being relatively neutral in tone, and I just love how they look on my eyes. And then you take this eyeshadow, you layer it over this one, and you get this beautiful like shiny wet lid effect. And what can I say? This can do one trick, but it can do the trick really well. It was like right there at the bottom, but then it clawed its way up all the way to the 7th position. At position number 6 we have a newcomer, but already an absolute star and a favorite, and this is another one of my Guerlain Ombre G quads, another one of their original release. So this is in the shade Metal Butterfly. Unlike Exotic Orchid, which offers you only 2 different types of textures, this one actually offers you the full range, like the full potential that these Guerlain Ombre G quads can offer you, because this dark brown shade here is in their what I call latexy pressed cream matte kind of formula. Then you have these two, which are more of your classic satins, and then you have this one, which is the sparkly addition to the palette. It's a small thing, but you can do so much with just that one small thing. So for example, today I have this pink shadow all over my lid, and then I have another eyeshadow from Pat McGrath Labs over top of that. This one also works beautifully as a one and done eyeshadow. Beautiful like intense pumpkin orange shade. This brown is gorgeous. I love this formula. I have to say though, this formula is a matter really of personal taste. It's really this type of formula that I far prefer to, for example, the one that is present in the YSL Clutch Quads, because this is the type of formula that first of all has zero fallout, but it is also very buildable, so you can do whatever you want with it. This is the type of formula that requires you to have natural hair bristles, because I think the synthetics don't really work very well. But once it's on the lids, you can do anything with it. You can use it as a liner, you can use it as like a very soft smoky eye, you can build it up if you want it to be a little bit more of an intense smoky eye. In fact, it was the brown eyeshadow that I was wearing as a base for, you know, some of the sparkly things that I had on my lids on the day when I was filming that ranking of luxury eyeshadow. So it's this brown that I have all over my lids. And then this gold here, whoa, this gold is gorgeous. There are golds and there are golds, and this one is just phenomenal. It's like this slightly cool toned, but with a thread of antique gold greenness going to it. It is loaded with sparkle and it just looks absolutely beautiful as a one and done eyeshadow. A couple of you asked me what I was wearing on my eyelids on the day when I had the ranking and swatching of my luxuriously lucent lipsticks from Lisa Eldridge, and it was literally this one eyeshadow. I had this eyeshadow buffed all over my eyelid, and that was it, and it looked beautiful. So I've really fallen in love with this color story, and you know, it houses my most favorite eyeshadow formula that I have discovered in the past like 1.5 years. So this quad came out of nowhere in the past couple of months, but it rightfully ranks within the top 10, almost in the top 5. Alright, we are at the top 5, and unfortunately the quad that resides at the 5th position is one that I don't really currently have with me right now. It is another one of my Guerlain Ombre G quads, but I lent it to a friend. I haven't really seen my friend for quite a while, so she currently has my Royal Jungle and Imperial Moon quad. So at position number 5 this year, I'm ranking my Imperial Moon quad from Guerlain, which is another one of their core line quads, and it is another one that offers you all the different types of textures, but I will try to insert a picture of it somewhere here, and I have a video where I've tested it out and demoed it on my channel, so you can see it in other videos. I just don't have it physically with me to show you, but I absolutely love this color story and everything about this quad. It is just so unique. It has it's not only unique in terms of the combination of textures, because I think it is quite ingenious of Guerlain to just have all these like different textures in such a compact format of a eyeshadow palette, but also the tones are just so interesting. There's this one eyeshadow in particular, like the smoky purpley one, that I think is so incredibly unique. I've never seen anything quite like it. So overall, an absolutely stellar quad if you enjoy somewhat more cooler toned color stories, because that quad definitely leans relatively cool tone. So that was also the last Guerlain quad that we have in the ranking, and now we're moving into position number 4, where maybe to no one's surprise, but yet shockingly, we have an eyeshadow palette from a luxury brand. I don't know for how long these palettes have been around. It's possible they've been around for a really long time, but I discovered it this year and I have fallen head over heels in love with this specific palette and the formula that is in it. And if you have been around my channel for just a little bit, you will know that we're talking about the Lancome Bronze Absolute Queen. I picked this up after swatching it in store and being like relatively impressed with what my fingers are detecting in terms of like tactile experience, but then I went home, I put it on, and the love affair that has been started, you have no idea how difficult it is for me to not go on the website and buy all of these Lancome queens. I love the textures that are present in this queen so very much. So first of all, this color story, stunning, beautiful. Who doesn't want a good array of like brown neutrals that are also like flattering and interesting tones with this gorgeous olive green in the smack middle here? but also the textures of these two eyeshadows very much remind me of that latexy matte that I was talking about from the Guerlain quad, only this one is not in the baked formula. This one is more similar to the one in the YSL quads, but it is not as powdery. I don't really know how to describe it. It is a phenomenal formula, and when you put it on your eyelids, I don't know what kind of magic they have put in there, but it literally works like a filter for your lids. It is such a flattering texture on the lids. Now with that said, I don't want to mislead anyone. Are there eyeshadows in here that are truly, you know, high shine, metallic, glittery, sparkly goodness? No. No, no, no. These are satin metallics at the very best. None of these is even like an intense high shine metallic. Even if you put a glitter glue, neither of these three can achieve even remotely the metallic eyeshadow status of a Pat McGrath eyeshadow. But they're satin, and again, they're so flattering, so beautiful, so ethereal on the lids. In the end of the day, I think you have to go and try them for yourself if you really want to know what I'm talking about, and to know whether these formulas are your preference. So Guerlain and Lancome is where my heart lies in terms of like luxury eyeshadow formulas. I do enjoy the Dior like baked formulas because they're also very beautiful, but I think deep down I lean more towards those like baked non-powdery formulas, and the more powdery formulas are ones that I associate with more traditional mattes, so they don't really wow me as much as the ones that are present in Lancome and Guerlain. And maybe something interesting to mention, I've talked about this before, but in case you've never seen a video of me before, these Lancome formulas, especially the two mattes here, very reminiscent of the formula that is present in the Lisa Eldridge palettes, which is also not surprising considering that Lisa Eldridge is the creative director for Lancome makeup. So there's that. Now if you've paid attention, you probably know who is left for the top 3, and I think a bunch of you probably already know which my top 1 eyeshadow palette is for the year. But you know, let's take it one step at a time. At position number 3, we have this year's mega mothership offering from Pat McGrath Labs, again from her holiday release. Now, these palettes were meant with quite a lot of negativity, and I'll be honest with you, I was one of the people who was pissed about the presence of the two blushes in an eyeshadow palette, because I don't like to mix different types of products in the same palette. Give me eyeshadows, give me, you know, blush, bronzer, whatever, in a separate format, but don't mix them together. Now, do I really still mind? I don't know that I really mind anymore so much the presence of these two blushes, because I actually really like the two blushes that are present in here. I'm currently wearing Nymphette, which is one of her original blush colors that I didn't have in my collection, and this one is the shade, I think, Coral Cosmos, which is a beautiful, bright, vibrant, peachy coral shade. Honestly, I'd go into this palette just to use the blushes. They're so good. But I really enjoy I forgot to tell you, this is Starstruck Splendor. It's always a bit of a tongue twister for me to say. So I have sort of learned to love the blushes in here, but I'll be honest with you, I also really like the eyeshadow portion of this palette. It is a very versatile, very interesting combination of colors, and while a lot of them are not unique, I still find a lot of them to be very interesting. The only drawback of this palette, and the one that I also mentioned during my original review, is that it doesn't really offer a lot of depth in terms of the mattes, because all of these mattes are more or less in like the light to mid tones. They are not going to provide you with a lot of definition. If you want something very dark and you have a darker skin tone and you want something that's going to intensify your outer corners, you're not going to find it in this eyeshadow palette. But I also think this was maybe geared towards people with somewhat lighter skin tone based on the selection of the blushes and the selection of the mattes that are present in this palette. So I don't really know, but I really enjoy this eyeshadow palette. I like the neutral tones in here. I love the two greens. I love the two greens. This like silvery sage green is just absolutely beautiful. This like iridescent salmony pink bluish green duochrome, beautiful. Is it something unique that we've never seen before? Absolutely not. Is it one of the sparkliest versions that I've ever seen of this eyeshadow? Also not. But it is beautiful and ethereal, and I love using it on its own or as a topper. Today I'm wearing it as a topper with that Guerlain pink that I mentioned earlier from the Metal Butterfly palette. And then I have this one just as a little like accent here in my inner corners, because I love the tone of this eyeshadow. And then I've talked about this green here before, this beautiful like warmer toned foresty green over like a reddish dark brown sort of base, which to me somehow feels like one of her baked formulas, but it is definitely not baked. It's in a pan, and but something about the texture of this eyeshadow reminds me so much of her like VR eyeshadows. It is phenomenal. I love it, and I love every look that I've created with it. I always enjoy pulling it out, so for me this is one of the best eyeshadow palettes that I tried this year, so that is why it rightfully ranks at position number 3. And now let's talk about the 2 queens from Pat's holiday collection that rank in positions number 1 and 2. And I want to talk about them together because to me they're like yin and yang. And to no one's surprise, we're talking about Bronze Ecstasy and Sunset Romance. So this is Sunset Romance, which technically ranks at the 2nd position, and then here we have the more cooler toned, you know, the yang or the yin or whatever you want to call it, my number 1 palette of the year, which is the Queen in Bronze Ecstasy. Both of these were part of the holiday collection from Pat McGrath Labs from this past year, and they are stunning. Let's talk about Sunset Romance first, because technically she ranks at the 2nd position. This is a beautiful neutral palette for those out there who enjoy terracotta tones, because there are just such interesting subtleties to the undertones of these eyeshadows. The 2 mattes here, beautiful. This one is like a rosy terracotta, and this one is like a true brown terracotta. And then you have this really interesting pink eyeshadow in the smack middle of the palette that I don't really know how to describe the tone of. It is something very unique in my collection and I absolutely love it. Then you have this like sparkly, like more like reddish orangey coppery type eyeshadow, and the look that you create with this palette is so beautiful, so cohesive, and so flattering if you have the correct undertones and you can rock a terracotta look. This is just beautiful. I get so much joy every time that I pull this palette out, and this is exactly what I meant with I prefer these types of formats to be a more monochromatic color story, because earlier when I was talking about Lunar Nightshade to me is almost like 2 separate color stories, whereas here you're getting that one color story. It's not that you can't do more with it, you can still play around with the eyeshadows and create somewhat different looks from each other, but I usually go to this palette to use all of it at the same time, because I truly love the end result using all of these eyeshadows on my lids. Absolutely beautiful. And the same goes for Bronze Ecstasy. Bronze Ecstasy just pulls on all the strings of my heart as of late. I love me a good interesting color story with neutral tones, and Bronze Ecstasy is that and so much more. Beautiful eyeshadows. So these 2 mattes here are just stunning. This taupe, really beautiful, like not very cool toned. It has a little bit of neutrality to it, it has a little bit of depth, but it's not really dark, so you can really play around with the depth of this eyeshadow. And then you have this gorgeous plummy brown shade, which is exactly the satin type eyeshadow that I would have preferred to have in Bordeaux Bliss instead of the stupid matte with the glitter in it. This is the type of eyeshadow that you want to have if you want to mimic a matte, but you want to have a bit of a sheen on it. This eyeshadow is stunning. The color, the undertone, the formula, everything about it is phenomenal. And then the 2 like standout shades here are just such pretty like undertones. There is so much dimensionality, so much like interesting like sparkle going on to them. Again, I love creating a look with the whole palette, but again, you can like mix and match to create somewhat more different looks with it, even though you're always going to stay in the realm of like cool to neutral bronzy looks. Bronze Ecstasy has truly been a standout palette for me, and undoubtedly my favorite eyeshadow palette that I have tried this year, for sure. I enjoyed so very much, and I think this is the 2nd year that we have one of those holiday queens taking the 1st position, because I'm pretty sure that Bronze Bliss took the prize last year. It was not Moonlit Seduction. I love Moonlit Seduction, but I think Bronze Bliss really like came out of nowhere and just swept me off my feet. And the same thing happened to me with Bronze Ecstasy. I expected that I'm really going to love it, but I've just like reveled in the joy of using this eyeshadow palette. But anyway, we've made it to the end of this video. I have ranked my 18 eyeshadow palettes, and now I have to go and like edit down this video to a more digestible format for you, so that tomorrow when you wake up on the 1st of January a little bit hungover, or you know, in the mood to do absolutely nothing else but become one with your couch, you can turn on this video and, you know, have a little bit of a good time seeing my eyeshadow palette ranking for 2023. Do let me know what your top 3 eyeshadow palettes were for this year, and maybe, just out of sheer curiosity, let me know which was your least favorite palette this year and why. As usual, I very much enjoy talking to you in the comments. Looking forward to doing more of that in 2024. I wish you a happy and healthy 2024, and let's continue chatting about makeup in the new year. Bye!